Welcome to our 5 on 5. We're pleased to be joined today by U.S. Congressman Cliff Bentz here in studio. Congressman, thanks for taking the time.
Great to be here, Craig.
So you were in La Grande, I believe, on January 6th, the one-year anniversary of the day. Trump supporters rioted at the Capitol building in an attempt to overturn the will of American voters, something you have publicly condemned. The East Oregonian reports you said Democrats were blowing the insurrection out of proportion to divert attention from inflation and other issues. Can you explain more of what you meant by that?
Yes, the issues that are facing the nation today, I think, were highlighted by the election in Virginia, where now Governor Youngkin won by 1.5 points. And he won because of inflation, and he won because of education. And people in that state recognized just how important it was that attention be brought to how much more everybody's paying for things. In the meantime, the Democrats were and continue to focus on the events of January 6th, trying to distract from what 7% inflation, no enforcement of immigration on the border, COVID out of control. It's sad they don't focus on things that people are truly worried about. This is not to say that I in any way justify the events of January 6th. I don't. I've condemned them in the strongest terms possible.
Isn't this an example of both sides playing politics, if you will?
Well, I don't think it's play politics to call attention to 7% inflation. I mean, people working awfully hard to try to make a living in really tough times and having to pay 7% more when they go to the supermarket, or something like 35% more for gasoline. Actually, it's higher than that, or it's 37% more for a used car. I mean, that's hardly playing politics. It's just calling out the reality of the consequences of bad policies by the Democrats.
The Klamath Basin recently received $162 million for watershed restoration efforts. This money coming from the $1 trillion infrastructure bill, which you voted against. Why did you vote against this bill when it would bring so much relief to your district?
Actually, I think it was actually $1.2 trillion, but I voted against it because it contained $60 billion going to Amtrak on the East Coast, which should have been money used for bridges such as the ones we have here in Oregon that are in desperate need of repair. In fact, I think at current rates, it's going to take something like 500 or 600 years for us to repair the bridges in Oregon that need repair. We don't have that kind of time, and our bridges are going to wear out. And so why in the world we dumped $60 billion into Amtrak is unclear to me. And that was just one of many of the unfortunate decisions made by the Democrats in crafting that bill. By the way, that bill came out of the Senate, came to the House, didn't change one word in the House, not one word. And then it went back to the Senate after the House passed it. I voted against it, but there are things in it that will be helpful, and I would have gladly supported if it hadn't been so loaded with pork.
We're going to take a quick commercial break. Much more in just a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back to our 5 on 5. We're going to hear in studio with Congressman Cliff Bentz. Congressman, this month you came out against the River Democracy Act that Senator Wyden introduced. You said it doesn't allow for sustainable use of the land and allowed inadequate local input. In that same chair you're sitting in just a couple days ago, the senator disputed what you said about local input and said the Forest Service backed his plan through testimony. How do you respond?
Well, the River Democracy Act, terribly misnamed, but the real problem with it is that it does damage to our watersheds. For 4,700 miles, I think, of reaches of rivers and streams and dry spaces called streams. And in fact, there's 4,700 miles, many of which we don't even know the location of. And that's because when the senator put the bill together, they didn't take the time to issue maps to show us what was actually going on. 4,700 miles of river corridor, each a mile wide, which is a half mile wider than any other scenic river in the nation. And what happens is not to say there wouldn't be input after 11 years, which is the normal amount of time it is recently taken to do the planning for a scenic river. So once this bill passes, and I hope it doesn't, then this label of scenic river would delay any activity for the length of time it would take to do the planning. Very bad for our watersheds and for the folks that live anywhere close to these reaches of streams, wherever they are.
Another environmental question. The White House said last week it has a $50 million plan to use controlled fires and logging to prevent future catastrophic fires in Oregon, California, and several other states. What do you know about that plan?
Not very much, but 50 million is a drop in the bucket to what's needed. I think Herman Bertschiger calculated with the help of others that just to address the issues in Oregon alone would be $3 billion. So 50 million is a drop in the bucket, far less than what's necessary to address the issues facing all of the western United States.
Switching gears more to local politics, there's a long list of Republicans running for governor this year. You're Oregon's only Republican federal legislator. Now, I would imagine you would endorse your party's nominee this fall ahead of the general, but will you be endorsing anyone ahead of the primary?
No.
And President Biden today said he plans to appoint the nation's first black woman to the Supreme Court after Justice Stephen Breyer's retirement. Will he get his pick through the Senate without a fight?
Well, it depends on how qualified that person is. There are many qualified people of any race, but the real issue is who is he going to nominate, and would they be a good Supreme Court justice? That's the real issue, not what color a person is. It's a question of are they qualified.
And what is your level of concern regarding Russia and Ukraine on a scale of 1 to 10 today?
Well, I'll know a lot more in about a week because we're going to have a briefing when I get back to D.C., but I would say it's about a 6 or a 7. Maybe it should be higher. But it's an important issue, and I want people to understand that from what I understand at this point, I certainly don't want our men and women in uniform going over to try to defend the Ukraine.
And I know you just said you're looking to hear more as you head back to D.C. Is there any disagreement that you have right now with how the administration's handling this?
Well, yes. You can't be wishy-washy when you're dealing with someone of Putin nature of Mr. Putin. President Biden failed, I think, miserably to come out strongly and say he would utilize the type of tools we have available in the form of sanctions to respond to, and perhaps even sooner than responding, should they try to invade the Ukraine. This is not to say exactly what type of tool we should use, but we should be very, very clear in saying we want to protect the democracy that's in that country.
Congressman, we really do appreciate you coming by every time you're in town to do this interview. Thank you so much.
No, thank you, Craig.
All right, we'll be right back.